All right, it's Christmas Eve over here in Durham, North Carolina, and of course I'm over here seeing what's going on. And of course, a lot of the restaurants are closed, as you would expect on Christmas Eve, and all along those lines. But I thought I'd see what was going on in the world and what's happening in the world. And of course, I've got my good buddy Rick with me.
Hello. Mark, you're frozen.
Thing, but how are things going on in your world and all along your lines, and what's happening in your world, Rick?
I just woke up from a Christmas Eve nap, so I missed the last 2, 3 hours. But I was out earlier, and I don't know, it was just another day.
Were a lot of people buying a lot of good things and a lot of eating going on in when you were out and about, or did you get all your Christmas shopping done and all
I
in that space?
just went to a few gyms, and I don't like short days where all the gyms close early because then that means there's more people trying to get in their last workouts. But it wasn't
Trying to get
bad.
in that, trying to get in that last workout, trying to see what they can do in that last workout. I know that even here in Durham, the buses shut down at 7, so we had Black Santa, and he's finished at a little bit after 3. He was scheduled to go to 3, but I think he went to about 3:30 or something like that. And then I left that building, which is the Cultural Arts Center I work at. But they were definitely a lot of kids. I talked to the lady. I think she said they had like probably close to. Probably over the several days, close to 1,000 kids coming in there, getting their picture with Santa, making their wishes, and saying what they wanted for the Christmas holidays.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah, so that's right.
I don't think sports have shut down. I think is there a bunch of NBA today? I know there's a bunch of NBA tomorrow.
There's a bunch of NBA on Christmas. There were some games, I think, today. Of course, the NFL had that slaughter of a game yesterday. So Green Bay just totally whooped up on the New Orleans. It wasn't even close. I watched part of it last night, and then I think I fell asleep because the final score was like 34-0. And I think when I finally gave up, it was like 28-0 or 21-0. But yeah,
and no NBA today. 5 games tomorrow. I kind of lost the NBA because my wife was looking at our cable bill. We still have cable. $300 a month, which includes internet and our phone, but we shouldn't. I mean, we're old, so we still have a landline because it's connected to our security system. But like, we were looking at ways to knock down our bill, and we just had to drop some TV channels. And they said, we can go with the crappier package, and that means we're losing our main NBA channel.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I know I've been dealing with that as well because I got Fubo and I got a couple of other services, and my TV services per month probably average, like you're saying, about 250, 300. And at some point I might have to be like, nah, I got to drop some of these services and some of these subscriptions because these subscriptions can add up very quickly, and then you're sitting there going like, why am I broke? Oh, that's right, I give all the money to the subscription people, and all along those lines. So definitely that can definitely go on in that space and all along those lines. Are we hearing any Christmas messages? Because I'm not near my computer like I usually am. So are we hearing any Christmas messages from our politicians? Are they sending us any Christmas wishes? Are they sending us anything that we need?
I've got Drudge Report up here, and they've changed the color of the ink to green and red for Christmas.
Okay.
But the greetings are no better than, one man dead and another missing as California reels from storms crushing waves. Next massive volcanic eruption coming will cause chaos across the world. We're not prepared for it. That's not super. The ink is Christmassy, but the news is not.
Well, speaking of things that are Christmas Eve, I heard somewhere that there was reports of the flu bug and some other bugs. So I guess people are preparing that we, even though we have totally gotten out of the pandemic, there might be other things that we need to be concerned about in 2025.
This is the best year for COVID since the first year of COVID. That we're at less than. Usually, there's a Christmas spike. and there's a little one this year, but it's less than 40% as tall as the two previous years, and 20% as tall as the really bad 3 years ago. So that's good. But yeah, the other respiratory viruses are looking not great. They're pretty bad. I don't have the respiratory viruses for the U.S., but I've got the U.K. because our kid's in the U.K. Let's see what the U.K. looks like.
Yeah, what does the UK look like?
COVID looks really good, really down, like not spiking at all. But RSV, which stands for respiratory syncytial virus, U-shaped from last year. It went zit, and it was pretty, down near zero, and now it's back up. So same thing for flu. Peaked in January, February last year, and now it's was at low levels and started rising in November, and now it's as high as it was in January.
Yeah, because I think what's the one that they call RSV? I think that's the one you're talking about. But they said that was spiking and things like that, and there's some other ones that are spiking as well. I guess there are some even events that were postponed because of the spike. I'm thinking that I heard about some in, I want to say it was Arkansas and some other cities around the area, including some Christmas events that they said too many people had gotten sick, so they had actually slowed those events down and everything. So there might be a winter spike with different things going on. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on in that space as well.
So COVID looks good, as in low levels across most of the country, but it looks not good in Arizona, New Mexico, Indiana, Ohio, Georgia.
And it might have been Arizona. I said it was in A-Town. I said Arkansas, but it might have been Arizona. But I know it was a couple of places that canceled their events because of what was going on and everything. One of the things I heard about, and we talked about it before, Rick, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, is when I was looking in line earlier, they were talking about how some of the Republicans realize that they have a thin majority, and they're glad that some of their fringe candidates are not as active, or in some cases aren't even in office, or in some cases they've been appointed by Trump, so they've got to get replaced. So they're saying that they're going to have a spirit of cooperation because they have a slim majority, at least in the early part of the Trump administration. So I just wanted your take on that, because it does seem like they're going to have to do.
All right, in the House, the expected margin is going to be 215 Dems, 217 Republicans. So yeah, just two lunatic Republicans like Boebert or Marjorie Taylor Greene could result in a tie. Yeah, and even when they vote for majority leader, if enough Republicans don't vote, I don't know. I guess it's possible.
No, that's one of the things that the article I read was talking about, how that it might not even be the same situation as it was when he argued that he actually won the election, but with the race for who's going to be in charge of the leadership, that could delay Trump's inauguration as well, because there's a lot of folks that want Mike Johnson to stay in there. There's other people that want a couple of other people, but if that is put up and hold, then that could hold up some of the other situations as well, including the inauguration. So that's what I heard when I was looking at the news earlier today. So they said it could hold up some things in that space. So it'll be interesting that maybe he winds up having his own people.
I don't know if it's possible for if enough crazy Republicans refuse to vote, if Hakeem Jeffries, who's the House Minority Leader, could be elected the Majority Leader. I don't know if that's even allowed under the. I guess it would be, because every time they vote, the last time they had a bunch of votes where Johnson got elected, Jeffries got as many votes as there were Democrats, and so I assume even though he's in the minority party, he could maybe be elected, which would be crazy.
I That would be real crazy. He could be elected. We got Nick joining us. I'm gonna bring Nick in. He got some
I might
conversation
look
points,
up,
and I'll let y'all.
I might see if that's something I can bet on. I lost.
Yep.
I bet on Harris getting elected, and I lost all my money with my online bookie. I'm down to $6, but I might put
Hey
all
Nick.
$6
Hey
on the.
Nick, just really quickly. Nick,
Yeah.
really quickly, I know you've been following things in Spain, but we were, I was actually on the bus early, but now I'm out getting ready to grab a bite to eat before all these restaurants close on Christmas Eve and everything. But I was just wondering your take on this notion, because as I was telling Rick, I heard a news report earlier where some of the Republicans are concerned that they might not have a much of a control as they think they do, because it's very thin in the House with some of the appointments, and it's also thin in the Senate because you have to have 60 votes, and they don't have 60 votes and everything for a lot of things to pass. So there might have to be some more coalition building than even they would like, and all along those lines. And then we were asking the question if is it possible that the inauguration could be delayed, because they're talking about this notion. I saw it in an article today where if they don't come up with the right Speaker of the House, that that could be a delay in the inauguration, and all along those lines. I mean, it's a long shot, but they are saying that it is possible. So what's your take as a lawyer?
Probably not. In other words, there probably won't be any delay. So the inauguration will take place as usual. There has been some chatter that Elon Musk will become the next Speaker of the House.
I think a Democrat would get elected before he would. I don't know. That seems.
Well, I doubt if that's going to happen. So I think you're going to find that they'll coalesce and they'll have somebody. But I think what you're seeing the real problem is, and this was pointed out. I'll see if I can share my screen by our friend Rand Paul. The crazy government spending that takes place.
Well, you try to share the screen. I'm going to go try to find and eat some food, but I'm still listening.
Well, don't go so fast. So I got to make sure my screen shares. Let's see if this will work. Okay. Let's get back here to reality. It's called the Festivus report. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
I have some space news off of Drudge. I had no idea this was going on, but NASA dropped a satellite into the corona of the sun, flew it closer to the sun than it's ever been flown before, and it's the fastest human-made object ever. It is moving. Where's the speed? At 430,000 miles an hour as it orbits the sun.
Yeah, that's why I heard it was moving pretty fast through the sun. But I don't know, have you seen this report? This is by Rand Paul, the Festivus report.
Okay, Festivus is, I think, is a Seinfeld reference.
Yeah, it is a Seinfeld reference. Okay, but the thing is that this report is pretty interesting as you go down through it. It discusses government spending. All right. Now, I'm assuming this is accurate, but I'm not sure. It says, ghost towns on government dime. The federal government spent $10 billion, maintaining, leasing, and furnishing entirely empty buildings. Okay. Pandemic plunder. Florida man stole $8 million in COVID relief. But I actually know, personally, I know somebody who did that. So a lot of the PPP loans, a lot of people just stole money from it. So I think this was underreported. People don't realize how much money, how much government waste was in these PPP giveaways.
They were not well supervised.
I know it was not well supervised is an understatement. It was horrible. They probably lost close to $1 trillion right there. Tax dollars at play.
It's similar to what happened with the Iraq War, where we were trying to prop up various forces there by dropping in, and there have been movies made about it, where we were dropping in pallets of $1 billion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and we did that in Afghanistan, too. We built $1 billion complex for it, and then we left. But see, this is what I'm saying, that this wasteful government spending has got to stop. It just continues on. Department of Interior
I think there's a pretty good movie about like plunder and treasure during the Iraq War called Three Kings. I think it's got Clooney in it, maybe Mark Wahlberg, where some soldiers decide there's all this. I think it's gold in that movie. There's this gold out there that's just sloshing around in the middle of war, and they decide to go after it.
Yeah. Well, if you look at some of the other spending, how about this one? Department of Interior spent $12 million on a Las Vegas pickleball complex.
All right.
What do you think about that?
Okay, so some stuff's ridiculous.
It would be nice if there were one or two things, but it just keeps going on and on. Department of Health and Human Services, a $2 million grant giveaway for kids to look at Facebook ads about food. You start getting the gist here. By the way, this is like multi-pages long, but here's something interesting. He goes, wasteful, increasingly wasteful. Americans are paying, you'll love this number, $892 billion, 2024, $892 billion on interest on the debt. How do you like that expense?
Well, that's a lot to go to nothing. Well, it goes to bondholders. So the debt is, in order to generate the debt, you have to sell government bonds, and the government bonds can be owned by, well, some of them are owned by countries, I guess. China
not
buys
too much. When I looked at, there's only like $4 trillion owned by countries. Most of it's owned by the Social Security Administration.
Okay.
We own our own debt. It's just really weird.
All right. Yeah, I don't know how that works exactly.
Okay. Well, apparently what happens is that the government issues treasury debt. Individuals buy it, corporations buy it, but also the Social Security Administration buys it. So you see how we're kind of
So when they buy it, does that help the Social Security Administration because they're making money on their purchase?
Yeah, it does, because the interest on their debt helps fund Social Security. So it's just a weird incestuous relationship. But if it continues, it's just going to implode. The only question is not if, it's when.
All right. So,
but if you go through this just keeps going on and on. National Endowment for the Arts spent $365,000 to promote circuses in city parks.
All right, so this has a historical precedent. This Rand Paul list from 1975 through 1988. A Democratic senator named William Proxmire did the Golden Fleece Awards, and like once a month he would pick a ridiculous government expenditure and spotlight it.
Right. Yeah. Well, the problem is it's voluminous. And when I did go through it, the shocking thing wasn't the volume of stupid expenses. It's the amount that Rand Paul actually missed. If you looked in the budget, there's a lot more than this. This is one reason. The only thing I think that was misleading by Rand Paul, he said, "Oh, there's $1 trillion in waste," and of the trillion, he put in $892 billion was interest on the debt. And that's kind of like nothing you can really do about it. But on the flip side, what he didn't do is go through some of the huge expenditures to things like government grants to semiconductor companies, like in the $60 billion range, Internet for All in the multi-billion-dollar range, the PBGC funding and $80 billion. I just went through it. It was absolutely staggering to see how much money was just wasted by the federal government. And you do need a commission of some smart people to go through this and just get rid of this junk. It just doesn't seem to stop.
Let me ask you this, because I don't necessarily understand this, but the Fed has cut rates 3 or 4 times. Now that inflation has somewhat come under control. So I just looked it up, and the The current Fed funds rate is 4.3% compared to 5.3% last year. Does that mean that can the Treasury recall some of its bonds that were sold at higher rates, saying we're retiring those, we're paying you back, we're going to issue new bonds at a lower rate and save 20% of the interest charges?
Yeah, generally they don't, because generally they're term bonds, but there are bonds that are issued that are callable, like what you just said, Rick. In other words,
So
but most of
now
the treasuries are
as
for
interest
20
as
years.
the Fed drops interest rates, does that mean that the U.S. will end up paying less in
Yes,
interest?
yes. That's part of the reason why it's almost mandatory that interest rates go down, because if they don't, then what happens, it'll bankrupt the United States, because they just can't afford having to pay huge interest on a huge amount of debt. So they really need to put a lot of pressure on the Fed to reduce interest rates so they can stay afloat. The other problem that I see, and I know everybody attacks this part, which is correct, but what they don't attack is revenue raising. You know, anybody understands basic money grubbing principles. To solve a financial crisis that you have, whether it's your business or personally, you have to cut expenses, raise revenues, or both. I mean, think about it. Let's imagine your credit card had $35,000 on it. There's different ways that you can go attack the problem. One, reduce your expenses. That's only one part of the equation. Two, you've got to increase your income. And the federal government, because Republicans don't like this, isn't looking at increasing income, because most of the people that would be affected by an income increase are the wealthy Republicans who want the cuts. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So in a way, it's kind of a conflict of interest, because in a way it's.
Yeah. So, I mean, one way to recover a little bit relative to our debt is to fully staff the IRS. And
That's true. Unfortunately,
the Republicans have shut that down.
Yeah.
Because when a fully staffed IRS has more wherewithal to go after rich tax avoiders.
That's correct, or you're absolutely correct. In other words, enforce the laws that are out there and be draconian about it. They can collect more revenue.
But the Republicans said, well, no, that if we staff the IRS, they're going after the little guy. And
that's the problem.
That's not exactly the deal. The IRS, when it's understaffed, goes after the little guy, because I'm a little guy and I get letters from the IRS, and they are computer generated. Computer generated letters don't cost anything. You know, a number doesn't match up. Like, you know, the way we do file our taxes is ridiculous. My kid's in England, and she just puts some numbers in a box, and it takes like an hour. And then she gets a page, and it says you owe this much. We could make it as simple as that. But the way it works is the IRS receives redundant reports, like Fidelity, where we keep our money. It sends a report to the IRS. Then the IRS asks for the same numbers from us, and if they don't match, a computer spits out a letter asking us to explain.
Exactly. That's what right now. It's mainly AI audits that take place because it's inefficient for them to audit any other way. But also at the same time, the tax laws do favor the upper end. And I'll give you an example. And I'm going to beat up the federal estate tax, because 17 years of my 40 years of law practice was actually working with high net worth individuals handling estate tax problems. Okay, now when I say high net worth, the founding family of Coca-Cola was one of my clients. The president of Bausch & Lomb was one of my clients. The president of Kimberly-Clark was one of my clients. The founder of Dunkin' Donuts, he's dead now, but he was one of my clients. And I can go on about a list, President Philip Morris. I mean, I did a lot of that. And then what happened was, in 2001, they decided to repeal the federal estate tax, which is one of the few ways few ways. Have you ever worked with wealthy people?
When you say repeal, did you mean raising the limit so high
No,
that
completely repeal it. And it was completely repealed. In the year 2010, if you go look at the law, you can fact check this, Rick. There was no federal estate tax in that year.
wow?
Okay, in 2001, they announced we're going to repeal the estate tax. And that's why I jumped into pensions, because my clients go, hey, there's not going to be a federal estate tax. I don't need a state plan. Why I need an estate tax attorney? And frankly, they're right, you know? And then they put the limit so high, it's now, unless you have more than 23 million, you're not subject to
That's so
federal
crazy.
estate tax.
That's like what, 10,000 people in the U.S. Families in the U.S. might have.
Very few people. But I can tell you, after working in that area for 17 years, one of the easiest, it's really, really hard to collect from rich people, because at least the rich ones I used to work with from the Depression area, they would hoard the buffalo till it's squeezed. I mean, every nickel, But you know what? It's very easy to take money from dead people and from beneficiaries who have their hands out waiting to get on some money. All right. With that in mind, you could have the estate tax come back with a vengeance. Tax it at $1 at 10% or 15%. Why not? In other words,
like, Republicans will scream saying it's double taxation. This is money that you paid.
See, here's the point. We have a national debt. We have to solve it. I don't care if they scream. Okay. And I want them to scream. I want them to scream so loud that we'll hear it all the way till Pod TV, because here's the deal. Okay. I inherited 100,000. Frankly, I inherited a lot more than that, but let's say I inherited 100,000. Okay. And I got to pay 10%, 10,000 or 15,000. Okay. I'm sitting here going, it's free money. Why do I care? So I got to pay the government 10 grand or 15 grand. I get 85,000 or 90,000. So what? The 90,000 is a windfall for me. This argument that it was taxed twice is baloney. I never paid taxes on it, And so the thing is, we need to get real. Okay. And then if the Republicans hate it, here's what you do. You earmark these funds to pay the national debt. In other words, all the estate tax money goes to pay the national debt. This way, you'll actually get money from Elon Musk. Otherwise, you'll never collect from that guy.
And that's simple and easy to understand. My mom passed away, and most of her money, we didn't pay taxes on because of what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, The other thing go on.
But she had some of her money in annuities, which worked really well for her. But under our tax laws, that money ends up being taxable when it's transferred to your heirs. And so my wife is like, why are we paying so much in taxes? And it's like, because we inherited so much. So like, just chill out. It's fine. We'll be okay. We're not paying, taxes on money we don't have.
Yeah. The thing is, that's the whole point. In other words, we have this big national debt, and this is a great way to fund the national debt, is to bring back the federal estate tax. But I'm saying from $1, don't give these huge exemptions. When I started law practice back in 1984, the exemption was 600,000. Married couples, we do these Q-tip trusts, you make it $1 million too. Don't do that. Make it from $1. So anybody, if you inherit 100 grand, you're going to pay into the system. You inherit 50,000, you're paying.
And make it simple to understand. 10% for every $10 you give the government $1 towards the debt. And another thing the Republicans will scream is family farms. But if
okay. See, this is so sick, because here's the reality. First of all, in the Internal Revenue Code for years, there's what we call a 2032 Cap A election on special valuation discounts for family farms. So in reality, none of the family farms ever closed down. None of them, ever, because of a federal estate tax issue, ever. Okay. So number two, the family farm is a myth. You're going back into like the 1800s.
Right, they've been squeezed out of business by other forces. For instance, if you're running cattle on your ranch, there are 4 major slaughterhouse companies, meat processing companies in the whole country, and they all together, I don't know if it's an antitrust issue, probably, they set the price for beef. and they set it low enough that the corporate ranchers they can get by, but the little family farms they get squeezed.
Yeah. Well, and you're right.
Totally squeezed.
Those will have more of a problem than the federal estate tax, because what happens on that case, you basically sell some of your acreage if you need to pay the estate tax, and you move on with your life. But the reality is less than 4% of the population live on these purported.
Right, and so here's what the little farms, the ones who survive, either sell off their property chunk by chunk, or they go into the boutique meat business, saying this is specially raised beef. They start raising.
Yeah, they do the farm to table thing, which is very popular and everything. But I did have a question for you, if I heard you earlier and everything, Nick, and all on those lines. Because I think I heard you say that you would like to get rid, because I work for arts organizations, of the National Endowment for the Arts, which actually supports most of the arts organizations around the world. So did I hear you correctly? You want to get rid of the National Endowment of the Arts?
No, I don't want to get rid of it. I want the federal government to get out of it. The federal government is broke, so they should not be supporting the National Endowment for the Arts. They should not be supporting Carnegie Hall. When I was in Manhattan, now Manhattan, by the way, for you people around the world who don't know.
So, but it's called the National Endowment for the Arts, so it's a national organization. So you would get rid of them in the Smithsonian? Those are all national organizations.
You didn't hear me, Mark. I said that the federal government will not support them anymore. I'm going to New York City, okay? And for years, I've been a member of Carnegie Hall, which is a big place. New York City is, listen to me, one of the wealthiest cities in the world. The federal government gave Carnegie Hall $1 million. The federal government is broke. No business giving Carnegie Hall $1 million. But people who live in this should be given that money, just like I did, as being a member.
No, I hear what you're saying, but the federal government also supports the various Smithsonians. There is the Smithsonian of Indian Heritage, there's the African American Smithsonian, then all of those are federal government property. So are you going to get rid of those?
Yeah, Mark, I didn't say get rid of them, Mark. I said manage it properly. I go to the Smithsonian all the time. I go to the National Gallery in Washington, D.C. It's beautiful. You know how much it costs me to go to the National Gallery? It's the beautiful art museum. It's free. Do you know why? Because
it's free.
Your government is stupid. When I go to the Prado here in Spain, or I go to the Sofia Regina, they always charge me like 15 to 30 euros to go in the door, and they have people lined up like crazy. I mean, even the Sagrada Familia, 12 million people paying 30 euros at a church that hasn't been built yet. All right, so here, listen to me carefully. You don't get rid of the Smithsonian. You get rid of the National Gallery, which I love. You charge people to walk in the door. Hello? And so you make it self-sustaining, and the people will come. And so this whole idea, I just walk into the Smithsonian for free, and I walk in the National Gallery for free. That idea is over. Okay, your country is broken, and you need to fix it, and you need to fix it fast. And that's the name of the game. Now, where else can they get the funding? The states and the local governments. You know why? Because they're in better shape than your federal government. Your federal government is really a sick puppy. Okay, now let's get back to this. This could help solve the problem. You could make it really simple. The federal state tax is 10%. Okay, from $1. So if you got 100 million, you're going to pay 10 million in federal state tax. You got 15 million, you're going to pay 1.5 million. You have 150,000, you're going to pay 15,000 in federal estate taxes. Then you bring this sucker back, so that you start collecting revenues from beneficiaries that frankly didn't earn it.
You could make deals with people if you wanted. You say you pay an estate tax, you get to go to the Smithsonian for free.
You could do that. That's true. Yeah, for every year that you paid in like 50,000, you get to go. You get free tickets to Smithsonian. But see, that also would be a great creative way to collect revenue. What I'm saying, I would accept that to be a great idea. What I'm saying is your federal government is incredibly stupid when it comes to making money. Okay, they have no clue what they're doing. They know how to give it away. I just saw them give away another 200 billion. to Social Security, which they don't have. As you can see from Rand Paul, they give away more billions than you could possibly imagine. And that's one reason you're in financial trouble. Now, ultimately, let's say you don't do this. You know, you see inflation, what was it last year? It was down to like 3% or something like that. But you'll end up like Argentina, where inflation was, until they got a grip on this problem, was like 10 to 20% a month. And literally, I've run into people here in Spain who've left Argentina because it is so corrupt, and our government's corrupt too. Go look at what we spend our money on. And because they can't stand the inflation. Can you imagine 10 or 20% per month? So your choice is either you do the correct thing, start charging wealthy people a tax and make them and earmark the money to pay back the federal estate tax. And they say the garbage. Well, we're paying taxes on it twice. No, you're not. And I'll tell you why. Because in our case, we had a property we bought for, I don't know, $15,000. We sold it for like $480,000. Okay. But because you die, you get what they call a step up in basis under section 1014 of the code. So you know what? We paid no taxes on that gain. Zero.
Yeah, I got in trouble over the step up because my wife and I were trying to decide my mother-in-law's house. She got too frail to live in it. It was a big house, and we're trying to, and she had to move into senior living. And then we're deciding, what to do with the house, rent it, sell it. And I was big on renting it, and I kept saying, "Yeah, we'll rent it. That way, we don't have to pay taxes on it." And then I found out about the step up. And my wife loves when I'm wrong about stuff. She gets to hang it over my head.
You don't sell the asset. You wait till the person dies, and then all the capital gains are forgiven. And if you think about it, so if I bought this property in New York for, let's say, $1 million, 50 years ago, today it's worth 30 million, and I die, there's no taxes paid. I get all the gain with no taxes.
Also, if it's a married couple in a lot of states, you have two step-ups. We found out that when my father-in-law died, his spouse still owned the house, but the step-up was based from the time he died.
Yeah, and so but the thing is, the myth, I got to pay taxes when I die, I've already paid tax on the money, is not true. It's absolutely not true. The fact is, you can make a lot of money and never pay taxes on it when there's no federal estate tax out there.
So the U.S. should get into the gambling industry. So I looked.
I would agree. But by the way, the reason I don't think they do it is the states are in it. Now, very interesting, and I tell students this. In Florida, where I lived, they passed a lottery, and they were going to earmark the money for the lottery to pay for kids' education. Then at the last minute, the Florida government stole the money. I'm not kidding. They took the lottery money, it went to their general fund, forget your education. In Georgia, a little different. They did the same thing. We're create the Georgia lottery. We're going to use the money to fund education. Georgia continued that. And even today, if you have a B average, and you graduate from a Georgia high school, you get to go to University of Georgia for free. Or Georgia Tech, where my son went, for free. Or you can go to Georgia Southern for free. Can you imagine that? Georgia State for free. So what they did in Georgia was a little different. They actually lived up to the promise where the lottery is funding education. Lotteries, I never play because it's negative equity generally. But lotteries is almost a voluntary tax. In other words,
well, I looked it up. The Americans gamble $67 billion a year, and that's legit gambling. There's also, under the table gambling. And if the government got into the wagering business, Americans love to bet. They could gamify a zillion, like the price of eggs, buy egg insurance. You pay the government like a dime a dozen now, and if the price of eggs go up, you've got a coupon that says, and so estate tax. Say you're afraid that there's going to be an estate tax sometime in the future. Pay the U.S. government 1% of your estate a year for 5 years. If the estate tax ever comes back, you're exempt from it.
Yeah, you're right. They can make deals like that. But see, here's what's happening in Congress right now, and your friend Donald. So Donald created the Dodge Commission, which is just basically something just made up. We're going
Doge,
to,
I think you pronounce it.
Doge. Right. In other words, you're going to rip out the spending, which I think is correct. Did he create a revenue commission? That's my question.
No, of course not. No.
Okay, so this guy, and Elon, has he mentioned this at all? He's supposed to be pretty smart. Okay, from my understanding, he's supposed to have like an IQ of 160. So this isn't rocket science. You should both figure out this in an instant. Okay, has he mentioned a revenue commission?
No.
Okay.
And some people that you've heard a little bit of buzz saying, where are the offsets? An offset is if you've got an obligation to the government or create like Biden, I think just made some kind of he just did what he called a fix to Social Security that's going to cost the U.S. another $200 billion. And people are saying, where's the revenue offset, right? That if you're going to increase one, you got to increase the other.
Right, that is correct. In other words, they're supposed to look at that. But what I'm saying is that not only do we need a Doge to cut out the horrible spending, but here's the other part to the equation, which is not being addressed by the media. It's not being addressed by the Democrats, which is odd because you'd figure they would jump all over this. And it's not being addressed by the Republicans. USC needs a revenue commission. In other words, how can we raise revenues to be able to offset the huge amount of debt we have? And one way, of course, I say is bring back federal estate tax. The other thing they do here, interesting in Spain, and I'm shipping money over here because I'm buy some real estate. If I buy real estate in Spain, the government takes 10% off the top. I'm going, are you kidding me? In other words, you buy a $500,000 property, the first thing you do is you got to contribute $50,000 to Spain. I'm not kidding. And I think that's good for Spain. And I think that's a good law. And that's a law that the United States should adopt.
So when I've heard some people saying that a balanced budget is a fiction, that the U.S. Treasury can just go ahead and print as much money as it needs, as we need, and it's pretty much what we've been doing. When we run a budget deficit, we are printing money. And the downside is that the more money you print, the more the money is devalued. You double the amount of money.
That's right. It creates inflation. So Nick
and Rick, if I'm hearing you correctly, everything that is free should be charged a fee because many of a arts council, many of a botanical gardens, many of a lot of these amenities that are in the various cities and states actually are free to go to. So if I'm hearing you correctly, they shouldn't be free. They should also be charged no matter what they are.
Of course. I'll tell you another interesting thing in Spain that exists throughout Europe. You pay money to go see churches. Imagine that. In other words, if you want to go to Santa Croce, church in Italy, you pay like 40 euros. It's like paying $40 to go into a church. Today,
you pay to go to church here as well. It's called a tithe.
Yeah, I know that, but that's voluntary. See what happens? They won't even let you in the door unless you drop money off and you buy a ticket. But I recommended this to Venice years ago. I said, Venice has too many people coming. They should charge a fee to get in. Finally, they adopted. Unfortunately, pretty small. It's only €5. Okay, so it didn't stop people. Throw the €5 in. Into Venice, they would go, and they still have the same turista problem. They need to raise it to €50. That might slow some people down, if not a revenue for Venice. And so, yes, a lot of our institutions need to up their user fees. Remember, the USA needs a revenue commission, not just a Doge.
Well, speaking of revenue, just up the road from us here in North Carolina, I know you're in Spain now, but you used to be in North Carolina. They just opened up a big casino. I think it's one of the major like Vegas type casinos, and a lot of people are very impressed and are heading up there because it is supposed to be all that fancy. And a lot of people, I guess, are taking their North Carolina money to go up to Virginia. I think it's one of the Harrah's, if I remember correctly, and everything. But it's definitely just been built, and apparently everybody's impressed. So they're migrating left and right to go spend their money and give their money away and everything. So it's a big fancy one. It's not an Indian casino. It's actually owned by one of the major Las Vegas type casinos. It might even be an Atlantic City one.
Yeah, a lot of them are owned by tribes because one of my former law partners was working in that area. And here was the interesting rule. Let's say that we want to establish a casino in LA. Well, California, it's against the law because they don't allow gambling. So what you do is you have your tribe go buy a piece of property right next door to Rick Rosner. So now the tribe owns the property. And then the tribe sets up the casino.
Yeah, we have a bunch of pretty fancy casinos of 50, 100 miles out in the desert. And like one of the casinos, I think at Yamava Casino, has a package deal that you go to a casino, you get points now for gambling. They give you a little credit card, you stick it in the slot machine. For every dollar you bet, I don't know, you get points towards, I guess, comped meals and stuff. And this one, this Yamava Casino, has a package deal where money you spend at this one gets you points in Vegas, which is a great freaking idea. Vegas is only 300 miles away. So, it's a 50-mile drive if you're addicted to gambling, to gamble out of LA. But if you want to take a nice trip, so you go and you gamble $3,000 and then you build up, 8,000 points. And then once in a while you drive to Vegas to spend your points.
Yeah, and the thing is, it would be a good way to help solve the national debt. In Spain, they also have a very big national lottery, but a USA lottery to help pay the national debt, I'd be all for that because they're going to throw their money away anyway.
Or sell inflation insurance for $100 a year to the federal government. You get a card, and this card says, you buy your card for 2024 and you go to the grocery and they plug it into their register, and whatever they say eggs are or milk is, you don't pay that price, you pay the previous year's prices.
Yeah, I mean,
Nick, I'm trying to understand something just so I understand, because today is Christmas Eve. Christmas is get ready. I actually had invited the people that track Santa and his reindeers to come on the show, but it was the last minute, so maybe they'll come on next year and everything. But if I'm hearing you correctly, since you want to charge everything, are we going to start charging for Santa to come to everybody's house as well? Because it sounds like since we need money, that this might be a way to get revenue as well. Not trying to be a Scrooge, but if I'm hearing you correctly, we got to get some money, so maybe we can get some money off of the fact that he's visiting.
Think about it.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Santa is a socialist. Who's paying Santa? Santa brings gifts to every kid in the world, and for free, apparently. He just drops it. Who's paying Santa?
That's wrong. There needs to be some quid pro quo, or the federal government needs to tax Santa. Okay, so that the federal government gets their fair share. Remember, we need it to help pay down the national debt, but we do need a revenue. Okay, because if you don't have a revenue commission, you're fighting a battle on one side of the equation. You're not looking at both sides of the equation, and the Republicans need to be on their big boy pants and figure out how to raise revenues. And there are different ways that you can do that.
But Nick, they figured out a way how to do this. Apparently, they're going after one of Rick's favorite people, because I did see earlier today that they were getting ready to target Disney and Bob Iger again, partially over the trans issues and a number of other issues as well. So I guess we're going to levy some big time fines on Disney, and maybe the mouse is not going to be all that happy. What's your take on that, since there's a mouse in LA as well, Rick? Because I know there's Disneyland and Disney World. So
Disney is getting less woke. Disney just dropped a trans storyline from one of its kids shows. So let's see. I don't know. I mean, Disney has been fined for a number of reasons, including wage theft. Disney agreed to pay $250 million to settle a class action lawsuit for not paying minimum wage at Disneyland.
Oh, really?
So they're not paying their workers?
Okay, so how woke is
so
they don't pay wage to the workers? How woke are they, Rick? I don't think they're woke
well,
at all. I
Disney
think they're
has been pretty woke. Disney, a lot of woke people work at Disney because Disney represents,
Yeah, but they're fake. I mean, the thing is, if they're screwing all their employees out of minimum wage, that's not woke. All they're doing is pandering to woke.
so what happened was,
They're pandering to the gay community. Okay, I mean, so what?
all right, so what happened with the wage theft is that minimum wage in California keeps going up.
Yeah, right. It's like 16 an hour.
Disney didn't keep up with the step up in minimum wage.
Yeah, right. But they're not woke. They're greedy capitalists. Okay, and what they're doing is they're pandering to the gay community because they have a lot of gay people that work there, and so that's it. But it has nothing to do with woke. It has to do with bottom line. And the real problem is that they're getting pushback from the non-gay community and the non-trans community. Are tired of listening to it every day when they turn on the TV set. And so they're rightfully getting a pushback because, you don't want to turn on the TV set and everything's a transgender issue. You just get bloody sick and tired of it. There's other issues to deal with in the United States that are harder than a transgender person playing on a volleyball game.
But that's not the biggest issue with Disney TV shows.
Yeah.
If you turn on the Disney Channel, I'm more annoyed. Historically, when our kid was young enough to watch Disney, I wasn't pissed off about their politics. I was pissed off about their lazy writing. So
really, okay,
yeah.
Well, I think Disney, the biggest thing they did, the biggest coup they did is buying Marvel. Because Marvel is really good. In other words, the Marvel characters are unbelievably good. But Disney itself, you're right, lazy writing, lazy script writing. And the best actor cannot save a horrible script. That's for sure.
So the best actor. One of the biggest financial regrets of my life is my wife used to work for an infomercial company.
Yeah.
And they split a floor in a Santa Monica industrial park in a building there was this dinky little company that just had half the floor, and they had just a crappy desk at the front with some girl just sitting there being a half-assed receptionist. This was in the 90s. And they had a crappy little sign behind her, and that sign said Marvel Productions.
Right.
And I ignored it. It's like nobody knew from Marvel at that. I mean, you knew what it was, but it was a crappy comic book company. And that company, I don't know what kind of revenue it had, but probably almost nothing. But if you could see the future, you could probably have bought 10% of that company for $50,000.
Right. It just exploded. I mean, that's life. I mean, they just really, really did very well. And we're going to do very well because we're going to leave everybody on Christmas Eve as it's heading down to the hour and see everybody, not tomorrow, because I think tomorrow we have the day off, but Thursday. Until then, for the people that don't have a life, I could do the same. Thanks for watching Pod TV on Christmas Eve, and we'll see you on Thursday. I think we're doing reruns tomorrow.
Merry Christmas.
All right. Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.